Strange NBA dark secrets nobody is talking about. The NBA, just like any other professional sports league, wants to keep a squeaky clean record, and in turn, this means sweeping some of the things that their players have done over the years under the rug. As a result of this, there are a lot of secrets that have been kept around the league for as long as it has been around, whether that be league-wide scandals or scandals that are focused on just one player. Today, we'll be looking at some of those scandals that players have been a part of that have been swept under the rug, and NBA players' dark secrets that no one is talking about. Jalen Rose. The first player on this list is Jalen Rose. Rose, in an interview, was quoted as saying that the number one unwritten rule of basketball is to never put your foot under the landing zone of a shooter. If a defender does this, it does not allow for there to be an area for them to land outside of the defender's foot. As a result of this, it oftentimes can lead to injuries to the ankle. We saw this when Zaza Pachulia did this to Kawhi Leonard, when Kawhi was single-handedly dismantling the Golden State Warriors super team. This injury kept Kawhi out for the rest of the series, and in turn stopped what could have been one of the biggest playoff upsets of all time. In direct contradiction to this statement that Rose made earlier in the interview, he admitted to committing this same act in a crucial NBA Finals game. He said in Game 2 of the 2000 NBA Finals, he intentionally put his foot under Kobe Bryant's landing zone, and this dirty play resulted in Kobe spraining his ankle and missing Game 3. Kobe would go on to win the finals, and would later on in their careers give Rose the most embarrassing game of his career. On January 22, 2006, Kobe would put up one of the most impressive scoring explosions of all time. In the 2005-2006 season, the Lakers were not a very good team outside of Kobe, and relied on him greatly in all aspects of the game. In this season, Bryant would go on to average 35.4 points per game. This game, however, would be the second highest scoring performance of all time, and the highest performance in modern NBA history. Kobe would erupt for 81 points on Jalen Rose, and would score 55 of his 81 in the second half of the game. He shot extremely efficient as well, going 28 for 46 from the field, 7 for 13 from the three-point line, and 18 for 20 from the free throw line. This game ended up being a comeback victory for the Lakers, with a final score of 122-104. Metta World Peace. The next player on the list is Metta World Peace. During his time with the Lakers, he went by Ron Artest, and during this stretch of his career, he was one of the most unpredictable players on the floor. One of these notorious moments is the time that he savagely threw an elbow right into James Harden's head. After his career, news came out as to why he may have been so sporadic as a player. In an interview, he admitted that he used to drink alcohol at halftime of his games. He was quoted as saying, "I used to drink Hennessy at halftime." He admitted to this only when he was playing with the Chicago Bulls, and it would be hard to believe that Kobe would let that happen in his locker room. However, if it allowed for Artest to play at his best, then it could have been a thing that everyone turned a blind eye to, and continued throughout the length of his entire career. Ben Wallace, who was in a notorious brawl with Artest, brought up his drinking in an interview. He was quoted as saying, "He said he wanted to fight me. You all need to check and see if he's still drinking. He's just running his mouth. You all know who you're talking about. It's Ron Artest, just talking." Even though Artest claimed to stop drinking during games, a former teammate of his refused to believe it. The source remained unnamed. However, it was said that he was very credible and reliable. Herron. The next story is a very tragic one that comes from the unchecked lifestyles that NBA players live. The league was more than happy to cover up this story and keep it suppressed, as it would be something that would slightly tarnish the league's image. This is the story of Herron. Over his career, he played only 2 seasons, one for the Denver Nuggets and one for the Boston Celtics. In his time in the league, he averaged only 3.2 points per game, 1 rebound, and 2.4 assists. However, during his time, he was a heavy drug addict. He said that he had suffered as an addict for 14 years. The first sign of his addiction that made national headlines is when Herron was a standout star in high school and committed to play with Boston College. It was revealed that he tested positive for cocaine and was kicked out of Boston College after only playing 1 game with the team. He then transferred to Fresno State, in which after one of the most impressive games of his college career, he failed yet another drug test. In the final year of his NBA career, he got to fulfill his childhood dream of playing for his hometown team, the Boston Celtics. Before a game in which his friends and family were in attendance to watch him play, he was a no-show during the team's warm-ups. This is because he was standing outside of the arena in full uniform, waiting for his dealer to get there just moments before the game was set to tip off. He said he shot heroin before his mother's funeral and left his wife and newborn son the day of his birth to go and get drunk. He also said that he could not play without heroin in his system. He later overdosed, in which he was brought back to life from. Since that time, Herron has been sober for years now and lives a healthy life. His career is full of unanswered questions on what he could have done with the potential that he had and what he could have accomplished in the league. Michael Jordan. The next player on the list is Michael Jordan. Jordan is arguably the best basketball player of all time. However, he did not come without any controversies or scandals. Some are well known, like his constant drinking and smoking, and his gambling addiction that some conspiracy theorists claim is the reason why he stepped away from basketball for a year, along with what got his father killed. However, one secret that Jordan has is talked about much less. That being that Michael Jordan considered himself to be a racist when he was younger. According to an article from Bleacher Report, in the book titled Michael Jordan: The Life, Jordan describes to author Ronald Lazenby how growing up in the 1970s in North Carolina, where he said the Ku Klux Klan was dominant, shaped his views on race. Those views were strengthened after he watched the miniseries Roots and learned about the suffering of his African American ancestors. The tipping point, Jordan said, came in 1977 when a girl at his school called him the N-word. As Jordan said in the book, "So I threw a soda at her. I was really rebelling. I considered myself a racist at the time. Basically, I was against all white people." It's important to note that these comments by Jordan were not recent. According to the author of the book, Jordan was a kid, someone with a narrow worldview due to his lack of experience. The Bleacher Report article goes on to say that there's no reason to believe that racism exists within any fiber of Jordan's being, but his childhood was filled with racially charged episodes that likely contributed to his thinking at the time. Kevin Johnson. The next scandal comes from Kevin Johnson. During his career, he was an explosive point guard who could jump out of the gym. However, he had some dark secrets during his career that would go on to haunt him later in life. Johnson would go on to be the mayor of Sacramento after his playing days. Johnson has been having accusers come forward about sexual assault that had been done to them from Johnson for decades now. It derailed his political career and the release of a movie that he was part of. He denies the accusations and says that he was acquitted of the charges decades ago, and if he was guilty, he would have been found guilty by law enforcement. From an article by the New York Times, Johnson said that the allegations were only being brought up again because he was running for re-election, and it was taking away from the bigger and better things that he was going to do for the city. He repeatedly said that it was 20 years ago. He was found not guilty, and he knew that the allegations would be brought up if he went for a political career, and it was something that he was not going to shy away from or avoid speaking about. Karl Malone. The next player that we will be covering today is Karl Malone. While the scandal about Malone is well known today, it was kept under wraps during his playing career, and really was not talked about too much until well after Malone retired. According to an article from sportscasting.com, Karl Malone attended Louisiana Tech University from 1982 to 1985. He scored 18.7 points and grabbed 9.3 rebounds per game during his college career. But there's a major detail missing from his legacy. While Malone was at Louisiana Tech, he reportedly impregnated a 13-year-old girl named Gloria Bell. In 1984, Bell gave birth to their son, Demetrius. Malone was 20 years old at the time. Gloria's parents took Malone to court for paternity in 1986, but he was never charged with a crime or forced to pay any expenses. Malone eventually agreed to an out-of-court settlement with Bell's family a few years later. After the birth of his son, Malone refused to have a relationship with Demetrius. The two didn't meet until Bell was 17 years old. "I grew up around good people," Bell told ESPN in 2008. "I never turned to a father figure. I was lucky. I didn't need one. I'm happy. I don't need anything else." The son that Malone had with the 13-year-old girl went on to be an NFL player. He has tried to reach out to him, however, Bell wants nothing to do with Malone. It is unbelievable to think that this story did not break or sway teams away from drafting Malone. He is one of the best players to ever play, along with being ranked second on the career scorers list. However, to commit a crime like this is something that should have been seen as inexcusable, no matter how skilled of a player you are. Jason Kidd. The final player that we will be covering is Jason Kidd. Kidd is one of the best point guards we have ever seen. and was one of the earlier combo guards in the NBA. He is now an assistant coach for the Los Angeles Lakers, and will likely be making the jump back to being a head coach sometime soon. However, back in his playing career, he went through a scandal of his own. In 2000, he was charged with domestic assault after his wife told police that he had struck her during an argument. Kidd was given a slap on the wrist, being charged only with a $200 fine, and being ordered to take anger management classes after he pleaded guilty to the charges. Later on during his coaching career while he was with the New York Knicks, he was charged with driving under the influence. While being a spectacular player and a budding head coach, Kidd does not earn the same high regard about his character. He has had other incidents that bring into question his character, like forcing multiple coaches out of their job while he was a player, getting into an altercation with an opposing coach while he was coaching, and promising to resign with the Dallas Mavericks before leaving them high and dry in free agency. Final thoughts. In conclusion, while there are countless great players on and off the court in the NBA, there are a few bad apples throughout the length of the league's history. Whether that be breaking unwritten rules and intentionally injuring players like Jalen Rose, drinking during games, which possibly could have led to multiple altercations like Meta World Peace, becoming hopelessly addicted to drugs like Chris Herron, having racist views earlier in life like Michael Jordan, assaulting women like Kevin Johnson or Jason Kidd, and committing statutory rape like Karl Malone. These are unspeakable things that players have done that have been swept under the rug by the league, or have just been forgotten by society. Thank you for watching another UpNext Sports video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with some players that we forgot to add to the list, and join us next time for more basketball content similar to this.